This is Ask, with your host, Michelle Martin, on 938 Live.
Welcome to a very special series of Ask, the second in a 4-part series where we want you to get to know the person behind the public figure. I'm Michelle Martin, and I'm so happy to welcome to the studio Minister of State for Community Development, Youth and Sports, Madam Halimah Yacob. Welcome.
Thank you, Michelle.
And Madam Halimah was telling me that she would love to hear from you as well at 669-11938, and she wants to know what Singapore means to you. We are discussing today the theme of home, the theme of belonging, the idea of inclusion, and we want your thoughts and your questions, your memories, your opinions of what Singapore means to you. So first of all, if we're discussing home, Madam Halimah, I need to find out about your home growing up in Singapore. Take us back in time. I know you grew up on Hindu Road. In government quarters.
I grew up in Hindu Road. Those are city council quarters. And the interesting thing about that place is all the neighbors are predominantly Indian. So I have a lot of Indian friends. So the best time actually is when we have Deepavali. Deepavali is when I join my friends and then visit their homes, eat all the cookies. And life there was really nice. Although we have to share a common toilet, we have to share a common kitchen. And of course, when you have to share a common toilet, the interesting thing is that you really have to take your turn, you know. First to go in the morning.
You have to plan as well, right?
You have to plan. So the first to go in the morning will be the men, because they have to go to work. And then the children, because they have to go to school, and then the housewives. So you know the packing order. You see, so you better time your needs very appropriately to fit into that packing order. But I think the wonderful thing is also that people don't lock their doors. So you could just go into each other's homes, in and out, you know. There's a lot of trust and confidence when I grew up. And after that, I lived in Seligi House. I moved with my sister, and they're predominantly 99% Chinese, you know. The interesting thing about living in Seligi House is that my sister, she has a lot of friends. So on the floor that we lived on, we have a Eurasian family, and we have a lot of Chinese families. So she loves to cook. My late sister, she passed away. She loves to cook, and she would cook this wonderful biryani, and then she would give to them, to neighbors, during the Hari Raya Haji or Hari Raya Puasa.
I bet she was very popular.
She was. And then Christmas, we'll get some cookies, and then Chinese New Year, we also get some cookies and some good, Chinese New Year stuffs and so on. So life was really good. And I think the thing is also that living in Seligi House, I lived during the period of the racial tensions, you know, the 60s. But
the riots.
Although, and we had curfews, but never at any time did my family feel threatened or fearful, even when we had the curfew. And although we were only like in a whole block of 17 stories, there were only 1 or 2 Malay families there, and predominantly Chinese families. But we never felt threatened or insecure or fearful. We felt that we are among friends.
So this is a time of heightened racial tensions.
Yes,
but you never felt at all that people looked at you differently.
No, we did not. Yeah. We felt
because
that
there was such a strong sense of friendship.
Friendship, community, support for each other, you know. Even during the period of the curfew, I could go downstairs, buy things from the Chinese provision shop, you know. We felt really comfortable, you know. So I think those are the things which are really important. Growing up, of course, my family was very poor. My father died when I was 8 years old. So that means that, my mother really had to struggle very hard to bring us up.
What did she do to do that?
My mother, after my father died, she's really a very gung-ho lady, you know. She said, so we all gathered around her and asked her, so what now? My father was the sole breadwinner. And so she said, look, so long as I have a pair of hands and a pair of legs, we'll survive. But she said, you all have to work very hard, you know. And we really had to work really, really hard. I remember as a kid getting up at 5 a.m. in the morning, follow her to the market, pick up stuff, so that because she helps to run a makan stall for a relative. So obviously, you have to buy the stuff to cook and then to sell. So I had to go and help her as well. All of us had to help her. And life was so hard. I remember going to school. The senior teacher one day called me up and she said, young lady, she said, your uniform is falling apart, so could you please buy a new set of uniform? And I really wanted to tell her I really would love that, but I really didn't have the heart to tell my mother, can you buy me a new set of uniform? Because I know she doesn't have the money to buy a new set of uniform. So, but I think it taught us a lot of values, discipline, hard work, and keeping together as a family to support each other. That's really important as well.
So you grew up in pretty tough times then?
Really tough. But then the whole of Singapore was tough. There's relative prosperity now because government has a lot more surplus, a lot of more money to channel to various schemes to help people, whether it is Comcare or other schemes. But in those days, we just came out of independence, and so government does not have that much money. But everybody sort of understood, and you could see the real spirit of the people then, So everyone worked hard, everyone tried their best to do the best for their family.
So when your father passed away, your mother took on the role as sole breadwinner.
Yes.
And really raised you all by sheer industriousness with
Yes.
what she could do with her hands.
Yes.
Did you feel help from the people around you?
Well, we had a lot of support, help from friends, from relatives. I think that was really helpful, And but we all know also that we have to do a lot for ourselves as well. That, there's no such thing as a free meal. That you really, if you want a meal, you really got to work for it, And we also, like, for instance, I remember going to school, saving every cent.
Did you
Every
remember your
cent is
pocket
very
money
important.
for school?
Yes, yes.
How much was it?
It was very little. In fact, when I was in, I remember 10 cents, actually. And then out of that, you really got to save, make sure you eat the cheapest. Or if you can't eat the cheapest, it's not available, you bring food from home. And then you save as much as you can, scrimp and save to buy your pencils, paper, and so on. Because I did not go to my mom and say, can you give me money because I've lost my pencil?
Because that was how you helped her as well, by limiting your needs.
Not creating a lot more pressure for her because she's got enough problems on her hands already, you see. Yeah.
Sounds like she did a great job. And how many children were there in the family?
There were 5 of us. I was the youngest. So in a sense, I was a little bit more shielded, but still, life was tough. But, I think that was the spirit of Singapore at the time. I wouldn't say it was just my own self, but as I look around, everybody was in the same mold, Everybody strives very hard to, to do the best they can for their family. Yeah.
I'm speaking with Minister of State for Community Development, Youth and Sports, Madam Halimah Yacob. She is sharing her memories, and we would like to speak with you as well. So if you have a question for Madam Halimah, give us a ring, 669-11938. What does Singapore mean to you? What does home mean to you? Is Singapore the place where your heart is? Give us a ring. Let us know. When we come back, more of Ask Your Minister. Stay with me.
This is Ask with your host, Michelle Martin, on 938 Live.
My guest today, Minister of State for Community Development, Youth and Sports, Madam Halimah Yacob. We are talking about the theme of home here in Singapore, inclusion, what it takes to build a sense of a community here in Singapore. And we'll take your calls as well at 669-11938. So earlier on, we heard Madam Halimah talking about her experience growing up on Hindu Road, and she said she wants to talk about Kampong Spirit right now. And what does that mean to you, Kampong Spirit?
Well, when we think about our life in the Kampong, although I must say I never really lived in a kampong.
Yeah, it doesn't
As
sound
you
like
understand
it's quarters.
No. But still, the spirit is there. And when we talk about kampong, you usually have a very warm feeling. You feel that the thoughts is a very warm, very nice feeling about the kampong. And then a place where you are welcome, people look out for each other, support each other. When there are big occasions, they all come together in order to help each other out. So that's the idea that you have. Your surroundings are not so nice. The roads are not so well laid. The mud pools everywhere. You go to Geylang Serai in the old days. My mother used to drag me during Hari Raya. Must visit relatives. Okay, so visit relatives. Then you got to take off your shoes, and walk because it's muddy all over. But then, so the roads are muddy. The houses are wooden. But when you visit a home, you feel the warmth. You see. How people, welcome you. They try to put out the best that they can have in terms of a meal and so on. So that's the feeling that you like, you see, about the Kampong Spirit. So in Singapore, it's the same thing. When you look at Singapore, not just the Kampong, you put it in terms of Singapore's context. Singapore, to me, should not just be a place where you have the sparkling buildings, nice roads, brand new MRT trains and stations and so on. No, it is much more than that.
It's a place where you can feel the warmth and the welcome as well.
That's right. Yeah. Because if you want to live in a place where you have nice trains, nice buildings, sparkling streets, then you can live in any other city in the world. It doesn't have to be in Singapore.
Exactly.
So it is a place where you feel there is a soul, there is a connection. This is your home. Whenever you come back, you feel a certain fuzziness.
And we always talk about soul, and does Singapore have soul or not? Really, it starts with connection and relationships with each other, and that's where
right.
soul starts. Yeah. Okay, let's welcome Jennifer with us. Hello, Jennifer.
Hi, Madam Halimah. I'm so impressed by your story today. I just wanted to say that. And I would have a question for you, which is, how do we get back this spirit? Because I'm very much probably in your age group. And I had that feeling as well, you know, in the old days we all just work in harmony. But I think the new generation doesn't seem to give me this impression these days. How can we work towards getting that back, that spirit back?
Great question. Thank you, Jennifer, for joining us. Okay, so, yeah, we're talking about the Kampong Spirit and the warmth. And is it at all compatible with the new urban, shiny, tall building Singapore?
Well, I think it is possible, you know, to create those things. If you look at the young today, you know, although we think that they don't have, they are not connected, they are, except that they use different tools. They use the social media, they use maybe SMS, Twitter, and so on in order to get connected. So what we need to do is also to start with ourselves. If we want to be engaged, to connect to people, we should take the initiative. Like for instance, in my constituency, we do a lot of that also. We create the platforms and the opportunities. Whether it is to the floor parties, whether it is to block parties, we create opportunities for people to get together, to get to know each other. But that will be quite superficial if people don't go beyond. We provide the first layer of engagement, but beyond that, I think individuals must make that effort. You know, I have this, I had a house visit the other day, and I met this lady. She's a Muslim lady and her family, and she told me that she lives in Bukit Batu East, and then her mother lives in Tampines. But she said that she's so happy because her neighbor is a Chinese lady, and she said this auntie is like my mother, because she said this auntie takes care of me. So she said, although my mother is in Tampines, I'm staying in Bukit Batu East, but this auntie is like my mother. I have a son, so I and my husband and I work. I know that, you know, there is someone who will look out for him if he comes back home from school and so on. So I think it is still possible. But I think what is also, because this auntie is good to her, is also because she's a very nice person herself. She cooks, she said she shares food, you know. So it takes both hands to clap. So what we want others to share with us, we also should make the first start and also should share with others.
I think that's great advice. I think a lot of the time Singaporeans are unfairly accused of being closed off or selfish, when really they could just be shy and stepping back from making that first step forward. And generosity is so important in building this sense of relationship with our neighbors, I think. And it can be something small, like just sharing food even.
That's right, yeah.
So,
you know, whenever I do house visits and I talk to the residents and I ask them, how do you find living here? And then they say, well, this is a very nice place. I have very good neighbors. The first thing they say is, I have very good neighbors. They didn't tell me I have a very good lift that functions, or my corridor is very great, or that I have a nice park. No, they said, I have very good neighbors, and I'm so blessed. They say, I have very good neighbors. So I think that's the starting point, really, when we talk about the soul. The Kampong Spirit is all about that. How we take care of our neighbors and how our neighbors take care of ourselves. You know, sometimes when I have neighbors who bicker and fight, I also have that. They will tell me, you know, I dread walking, coming back home because I have to pass this particular house. And then I dread coming out of the house because I have to pass this particular flat, you know. So you see, it starts not with having very nice buildings, sparkling. I mean, that's important, the infrastructure. But it is the heart, you see, that's really important.
And really, your neighbors set the atmosphere for home. Like you say, if there's hostility, you can feel the chill when you're walking past by a certain home. Okay, take us back a little bit more. I think people are really enjoying hearing about you growing up and your memories. And I understand that you were a student of Singapore Chinese Girls' School. How did that come about?
Good question. You know, I think it came about because my mother worked for a North Indian family. And then the North Indian family had a daughter of their own, only daughter. And I used to go with her, and then I used to play with the daughter of this North Indian family. And I think I suspect that At that time, the North Indian family wanted to register their daughter in Singapore Chinese Girls' School, and probably, the mother said, why don't you also register your daughter to my mother? And that's how I ended up in Singapore Chinese Girls' School.
Learning Chinese for 3 years.
I learned Chinese for 3 years, but unfortunately, I don't have the home environment to support the learning of Chinese. And also because in primary 4, the school decided that, look, most of the kids are failing because Singapore Chinese Girls' School, a lot of Peranakan children, they don't speak Chinese at home.
So you didn't feel left out because a lot of them spoke Malay then?
No, I didn't feel left out. So when in primary 4, the school introduced Malay, I think more than half the class switched to Malay. And I actually became the most important girl in class because everybody was asking me what is this word, what is that word, because they were learning Malay, spoken Malay, written Malay properly only in primary 4. And then the interesting thing is I had a teacher teaching me Malay who's a Chinese teacher. The teacher teaching me Malay in Singapore Chinese Girls' School from primary school to secondary school is a Chinese teacher. She's a Peranakan teacher living
wonderful.
Along Emerald Hill Road. That's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
From a Malay girl to learn Chinese, to learn Malay from a Chinese teacher. But that was Singapore then, It was really interesting. Yeah.
Wonderful. Madam Halimah Yacob is Minister of State for Community Development, Youth and Sports, and we are getting to know the person behind the political office. If you would like to call through and speak directly with Madam Halimah, you can do so at 669113938. We come back in just a while. This is Ask Your Minister. Stay tuned.
This is Ask with your host, Michelle Martin, on 938 Live.
And my guest, we are so privileged to have with us in the studio Minister of State for Community Development, Youth and Sports, Madam Halimah Yacob. This is called Ask Your Minister because, of course, we want you to do the asking as well. So call through 669113938. Madam Halimah, Derek called earlier and he said you triggered some great memories for him and he would like to thank you for that.
Thank you, Derek.
A lot of people enjoy being taken back to the Kampong spirit and the Kampong era. What do you miss most about that?
Well, I think, as Derek said, sometimes life in Singapore is so fast-paced, so we don't have time to stop. In the Kampong days, what you do recall is neighbors hanging out, talking to each other, sharing stories, And even I remember in the when we have the communal toilets, that's where all the women hang out and they talk to each other.
Because they had a long wait.
They had a long wait, so they might as well spend time talking to each other. And then the kitchen is a communal kitchen, so they also share stories, share recipes, stories about their children. So I think that's the part where we sometimes miss out because our life today is very fast-paced. People don't really have time to hang out, and we got to watch out about the use of the social media because we tend to engage with people a lot on the social media.
Yes.
You see, in my work, I also use the social media. I have a Facebook, but then I have very limited use, but partly because by the time I reach home it's already 11:30 p.m. or 12 a.m., to go and open the Facebook takes a bit of time. But I do try to, try to connect. But I'm more of a face-to-face person.
Yes.
So I do very extensive face-to-face house visits 2 times a week. I attend the funeral wakes, People ask me, why do you attend funeral wakes? Even my grassroots leaders sometimes ask me, why do you do that? But when you attend funeral wakes, that's where you got a chance to ask people when they're really down, to ask them, do you have any problems? Do you need any help? Then I went to one, and the man who passed away was a sole breadwinner. He was 41 years old. Then the wife has 2 young children, so she needed support. So immediately I could say, okay, I'll quickly apply for Comcare financial assistance, and she need other support for the children's schools and all that. So that's what I did, you see. So I'm very much a face-to-face person. I do use the social media, but I'm a lot more of a face-to-face person. But the social media is useful. There could be those who need to engage with you through the social media, but we must never lose that part of it. And I think that is also part of the Kampong Spirit. That you do need to have that physical contact. It's very different when you see somebody, look at the facial expression, the body language. That's where you connect, you see. Rather than when you look at this computer screen, you're not connecting that well, you see.
Yes.
So that makes a big difference, and that is, I think, what is necessary in terms of contributing to the Kampong Spirit.
Well, speaking of this theme of communal space, because it sounds like in the past, in the Kampong days, people connected very much when they were sharing things, sharing facilities for the bathroom, sharing facilities for the kitchen, for example. And some people might say Facebook is that shared common space. But I understand, tell us a little bit about private and public space for you, because you were telling me during the break that you still live in Yishun.
Yes.
And this is an HDB flat.
Yes,
and
yes. Yeah.
People are still very respectful of your private space.
Yeah, I think this is the thing. We always assume that Singaporeans, we sometimes have a lot of negative thoughts about Singaporeans, but no, Singaporeans are really good people, you see, because like I live in a HDB flat, but people know who I am.
Yes.
But they acknowledge, they talk to me, but they also appreciate and respect my private space, so I don't have people coming, knocking on my door. I say, could you please help me in this or that, So, so that shows that people understand what is a public space, what is a private space. But of course, having said that, being a public figure, that everywhere you go, people do recognize you. And, one of the things my children had to get used to in the earlier days when I first entered politics in 2001 is this idea of people just recognizing you. But in initial stages, it was rather tough because there's, people come out to say hello and acknowledge you and so on. But I think after a while, they get used to it. And you also get used to it, accommodating people and understanding that people also people just want to get connected to you. That's all.
Yes, they feel like they already know you because they read your speeches or they see you on TV, and
That's
so
right, that's
they
right.
feel like they already know you. There's a familiarity. So take us back to the early start of your career. This is the late 70s. Tell us about the decision that you made to join the Labour movement.
Well, after I graduated, I applied for a number of jobs, legal jobs and then government jobs and so on. And also I saw this advertisement in the Labour movement. It talks about advancing workers' interests, promoting the cause of workers and so on. I said, well, this sounds interesting, not the usual government or legal job. Let's go and try. So I tried, and before I could go for the interview, I had to go and read up. Also, it talks about the modernization seminar. It talks about how Labour fights for workers' interests and so on. I found that very inspiring. So I decided that, look, I had benefited from society. I had a chance of an education. So why not then, also have the opportunity to contribute back. So I joined the Labour movement in 1978, and I served in the Labour movement for 33 years. And those were really, really fulfilling 33 years. You meet workers from all sectors of the economy, workers from all levels, and really, really very, very inspiring. And you never pass a day without being inspired by somebody or by something, So, and the feeling that you're really contributing to somebody's welfare, I think that was the best feeling that you could have, and one of the best jobs. It's not just a job or a career, but it's a chance to contribute to a cause as well. Yeah.
And you have spoken so passionately for the needs of the men and the women on the ground, Madam Halimah. So thank you on behalf of all of us here in Singapore.
Thank you.
66911 to call through. Speak directly with Madam Halimah Yacob. She's Minister of State for Community Development, Youth and Sports. And we would like to hear your views. Do you feel, as a society here, you would like to bring back the Kampong Spirit? Or do you feel, in Singapore we lack a little bit of compassion, and this is coming from growing up in a me generation. Is that a fair criticism, do you think, of Singapore, Madam Halimah, that as a society we lack compassion? That's a generalization, but your views.
I think it's a generalization. I've seen a lot of really very compassionate people. It's just that sometimes with Singaporeans you need to press the right button. They need to find the right reasons, the right causes. Like for instance, I visited one of my the condominiums under my constituency. So I was talking to the residents there in a dialogue session, and I said, look, you're living in a private estate, but there are people living on the other part of the estate under my division, Bukit Batu East, who could do with some of your help and your support. And then after the dialogue session, one lady who's a retired teacher, she came to me and she said, look, she says, I'm a teacher, I'm now retired. I don't know what I can do, but you think I could do something? I said, sure. You could come and teach English perhaps to the elderly, the seniors in my constituency living on the other side of Bukit Batu East. And she said, why not, So you see, sometimes you need to take the step to appeal to people. People want to help, but they also don't know where to go, how to do it, you see. So if you provide opportunities, you open the windows, they will come. I'm quite confident of that. Yeah.
6691138. Let's talk a little bit about building a community spirit and neighborliness here in Singapore. From 2005 to 2010, Singapore welcomed between 17,000 to 20,000 new citizens every year. Last year, that number dropped to about 15,700. There's a lot of talk about integration now, and we talk about it as if it's a new theme, but really, it's been part of our pledge for a long time, regardless of race, language, or religion, bringing people together. We're a migrant society. And we talk a lot about the role that the government must play in terms of ensuring inclusiveness, but there's a role for us as Singaporeans as well, don't you think?
That's right,
Halimah?
yeah. When I was growing up, I think we were a lot less conscious about race. Although it's a little bit of a paradox because, you remember the 60s, we had racial riots, tensions and so on, but yet we were less conscious about race.
Yes.
Because you sort of accept that, there will be people coming from different parts of the world living together. I remember I have relatives who come in from the ship, coming from India, sometimes you had to go and greet them when they come down.
So you wouldn't go to Changi Airport, you go to the port.
You go to the port, that's right. And then they come with their pillowcases, literally, with their pillows, and with their wrapped up in a sheet, they come down to sing their roots in Singapore. So and I remember because after my father died, I lived with my sister. My sister married an Indian, he was born in India and then he sung his roots, became a citizen, lived in Singapore. And then in those days, we do have people coming in from India, children, because their parents bring them here. So sometimes I do get them coming to stay with us for a few days until they find proper accommodation or until their father or their mother find proper accommodation. People are a lot more accepting, providing shelter, support for each other. I don't think we've lost that. It's just that today people feel a little bit more uncomfortable because it's just they see huge numbers coming in and they just, it's also a transition period. It's transition period in terms of how we adjust to the needs, to the new people coming in. Fundamentally, I don't think people are against, but they just want to know also how it fits into their own scheme of things, their own lives. That's important. Yeah.
Well, Madam Halimah, we've been asking people to call through with their questions and their comments, and here's one from Daniel Loga. And actually, I think Daniel was a little bit too shy to stay on the line, but here's what he wanted to say to you. It's a note of appreciation. She is one of the best, both in terms of the implementation side as well as in terms of explaining initiatives on labor issues. So big thank you to you from Daniel Loga.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you.
A lot of appreciation. Bouquets coming your way. You can hand Madam Halimah a bouquet yourself, by the way, at 6691138. Do you think, though, that the government has a role in terms of ensuring inclusiveness?
Most certainly. I think government is always trying its best. In terms of, you look at MCYS, we have the ComCare financial assistance schemes, we have various other programs as well. But I think it is a lot more that we ourselves can do in order to help each other, to support each other. Nothing can replace that, the human spirit, reaching out to each other, supporting each other. I think that's really very important. And what the government can do is we provide opportunities. So through various platforms, whether, you look at the HDB, they have even a department called Community Relations Group in order to develop community relations among people living in HDB estates. But I think those are just platforms. The ball is in our court as Singaporeans, as individuals, how we can create a kampong spirit within the areas we live in and also for the whole of Singapore. Sometimes it's funny. When we go overseas, then we begin to value Singapore.
Yeah, we were just talking about this.
Yeah,
yes.
When you go overseas and say, oh, I want to go home. Like, for instance, when you go somewhere and you are eating fish every day with cream sauce on top, and you say, oh my God, where is the chili? Where is the laksa? Where's the chili? Where's roti prata? So, you begin to appreciate Singapore when you go overseas. Then you say, oh my goodness, you see. So, compared to Singapore, we always tend to compare when we are overseas. But then when we come back here, I think it's where the real work should be done. Yeah. And we should really look around us to see what more we can do to create and to preserve that spirit. My biggest concern is we're losing that, We're just focusing on infrastructure.
We're losing the focus on creating opportunities.
The softer part of ourselves, the values, principles. What do you mean by Kampong Spirit? It's not having a nice new building, as I said, new HDB estate with more and more features, water running like a river around it and so on. I think those are just the material aspects.
It's
But
really
much
living
more
the
than that.
values of generosity and kindness and
Compassion,
Yes.
caring for each other, as I said, all that you can find anywhere else in the world. Why would you want to live in Singapore if it is only just for that? But you want to live in Singapore because you care for the people living here, and this is where it is your home, you see. I think that's really the important part. This is where your family is, where you want to come back after you've gone outside for a few days. You say, I really want to come back because this is home, you see. Where you feel the comfort, you see, the comfort level is so high.
yes.
Yeah.
But people also feel it's home if they feel there is hope for them to turn their dreams into reality.
That's true. I think that part of it, the government must never lose sight of. And that is, you must always make sure everyone feels that they have a hope. And this is why I think social mobility is extremely important.
Yes.
You must make sure that those who are in the lower income can see that there is hope for themselves and their children. Because that is the hope that we lived by in the past. We were very poor, but I had that hope, you see, to break the poverty cycle. I know that I must get an education, come out with a degree. My only thought is get a degree, come out, get a job, and help my mother, you see. That was the hope. So that hope is something that we must never kill. And that is also essential as part of the Kampong Spirit. The sense of belonging, the sense of purpose. Why are we Singaporeans? Because we have hope.
Yes.
In this place, you see. Yeah.
And the sense that still in this day and age, if you apply industry because of meritocracy, you can make something of yourself here.
That's right. That everybody stands a chance. The opportunities are there, provided you're prepared to make use of it. And for those who are weaker, because they cannot reach the starting line because they are weakened for whatever reasons,
Yes.
family background, lack of finance and so on, then you must have the government supporting together with the community.
And we'll talk about that, including the needy and the safety net, welfare safety net as well. We've been asking you to call through, and here you come. Here's Rajaram calling through. Hello, Mr. Rajaram.
Hello.
Welcome to Ask Your Minister. Go ahead.
Yeah, I know Halimah quite well, but as a housewife holding an important portfolio in the MQIS as a minister, how does she cope up with all those things, being a housewife, being a minister, and able to do union work and all those things? I just wonder how, really amazing,
Work-life balance. How do you do it, Madam Halimah?
Well, Rajaram, thank you for the question. Yeah, I think I wouldn't pretend that it's easy. It's really tough. There's only 24 hours in a day. But I think what you need to do is that you need to also be able to prioritize, and you need to have a really supportive family as well. So and you need also to organize yourself. That's very important. And at home, for instance, I do make sure that we do have family time together. We cannot say that just because you are the position you're holding, the job you're doing, you neglect your family. I think that's the worst thing to do. I wouldn't want to say that to anybody, that for whatever reason, just because of your job, your career, you should neglect your family. I think that's the silliest thing to do. Family is very important. At the end of the day, you have to go back to the bosom of your family. The warmth of the family is the one that will sustain and support you throughout. So you must create opportunities. So sometimes for me, it's also finding time to tell the family, let's get together, we go out for a meal, or sometimes we eat together at home. We do have to consciously create those opportunities. And those are times that I truly value. They may not be many hours, like for instance in a weekend, maybe a few hours on a Sunday or Saturday, but those are really wonderful times. And in those days when I'm not so busy, I also cook. Not very complex cooking. Maybe I just buy the pizza, the base I just buy from cold storage, and then I do my own toppings. You do. So I just buy the base, I put the topping, and that's it. And the family love it, And I ask the children in those days, what would you like for toppings? And then they'll tell me, and we'll do it together, you see. So find ways and means to get the family to do things together. I think that's also very important.
What I hear, Madam Halimah, even from your speech patterns, is, you talk a lot about creating opportunities. You're a woman who seems to want to make things happen and look out for opportunities and make it happen for yourself. Is that advice you give to Singaporeans when it comes to seeking happiness in their lives?
Yes, I think that often we always think that opportunities are created for us by other people, that we must wait until the opportunities roll in. But it's not true, There's a lot of things that you can do for yourself. in terms of how you manage your life, in terms of how you manage your career, your expectations. There's a lot of things you can do. But when you're in a position of authority, responsibility, it's also your job to create opportunities for other people. And that's what I think for women is very important, especially that when they are in positions of authority and so on, they should create those opportunities, whether in terms of helping other women, open the doors for other women, or in terms of ensuring that women can stay in the workforce through ensuring their work-life balance opportunities. I wouldn't say it's only for the women, bosses who must do that. I think all bosses should do that as well.
Yes, but especially I think for women who are still to some extent the underclass, strong women can help other strong women
Most
succeed.
certainly, yes, most certainly. Yeah.
Let's talk about those among us who do need help. How do you think we can help those in need and not fall by the way of welfareism?
Well, I think we have many schemes in Singapore, of course, for those who are in need. The most important thing is, I think, two things in my view. It is education and skills upgrading. Education is for the children, so we break the poverty cycle.
Yes.
And it is right that the government is investing a lot of money in terms of helping the children to level up. There's a lot more that we can do. That I will be one of those who say that we can do a lot more, but certainly we are investing a lot of resources, in order to make sure children get that opportunity. At least, we cannot guarantee the outcome. Everybody has the same outcome, but we must at least ensure everybody can reach the starting line. If even they can't reach the starting line, then I think that's a sad state of affairs. So social mobility, opportunities for children so that they can break out the poverty cycle is very important. The other one, I think, is the low wage, high wage, the gap, the income gap. And this is where I think for low wage workers, opportunities for skills upgrading, ensuring that they are able to do jobs that pay well, is actually very important. And that's where a lot of resources also must be put in order to assist them, And it's not just investing in them, making sure they get skills upgrading and so on, but the jobs themselves must pay better. We can't have jobs that pay $500-600. I think nobody can live on those wages.
Yes.
It's really completely unacceptable.
Yes.
And I'm really glad that the labour movement, together with the government and employers, are working together to make sure that wages, that the jobs that we have do pay much better.
I wish we had more than an hour to talk to you. It's been a wonderful conversation, Madam Halimah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Minister of State for Community Development, Youth and Sports, Madam Halimah Yacob on Ask Your Minister. I'm Michelle Martin.